Greetings and welcome to another episode of State of the Build here on the Peak Auto YouTube channel. My name is Emily Reeves and I'm your host of this awesome series. I call it awesome because I get to talk to my friends and fellow YouTubers and check in on their builds. Now, this episode should have taken place live like the last one did because I just got to see my friend Kevin at Sick Week a couple months ago. But this one didn't take place live because we were all running like crazy and Kevin was wrenching on the car, running the car, making passes in the car. The car is Soccer Mom, and if you aren't familiar with Kevin from KSR Performance, where have you been? He has worked on a ton of YouTubers' builds over the years, and he's just an awesome person, so I'm excited to have him on this episode. Let's shoot him a text. Good morning, Kevin. What's going on, dude? Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I know we discussed it when we were at Sick Week. It feels like a couple months ago. Was it a couple months ago? Nevertheless, you were running the crap out of the Camaro, and I'm so excited to get the rundown on the car. I did not watch the build. I do not know what the power plant is. We talked about the transmission a little bit when we were out, at the event, but I'm excited to get the rundown on the car and what the power plant is and how long you've had it. Does it have any kind of special memories to you or anything like that, like some people's builds do? Let's start from scratch with her. Give us the report on Soccer Mom.
All right, good morning, Emily, and thank you for having myself and Soccer Mom on the State of the Build show that you put on, sponsored by Peak. So Soccer Mom. And we didn't really get the chance to talk about the car at Sick Week a whole lot, which was only like a month ago. I know it doesn't seem like it, but the last month has been an absolute blur. But here we are. She's back going again because, like we discussed at Sick Week, we did have some transmission issues that we didn't know we had. The car was still working, but it just wasn't working right. But this car is a joint project between myself, Kimber Jones, and Will Stevenson. Kimber has actually owned this car for a lot of years. I think all the way back into the 90s. When he originally bought it, it was tons of different colors. And as you can tell, she's a little prettier than what she used to be. We actually have two separate front ends for the car. We have a fiberglass door and fiberglass front end package that we sometimes run. Back when we ran the car in some outlaw grudge racing trim, back with a stock block 5.3 base build. And with that combination, actually hauling a Christmas tree, this car has been as fast as 739 and 184 miles per hour with that particular combination. That was at about 2,800 pounds, but we've switched the car up for this year with a different engine and all of our steel package, and we're looking to go even faster than that, but even at the heavier weight. So ask me some more questions about her and we'll keep on going from there.
Heck yeah, I love a good collaboration build. I love also that this car has seen many phases and a bunch of different variants in the build. So you're heavier now and you want to go faster. So what's our power plant now?
All right, well, for 2023, Soccer Mom is sporting a brand new Texas Speed 388 cubic inch LS iron block engine. That's my fancy artwork there on our custom, our custom intake here, which we've got a little bit more to talk about the intake in a minute. But you can see old Soccer Mom gets some extra motivation from a 91 millimeter forced induction turbo. She gets a little bit of fresh air right here through the grill. And the keen eye will notice that we don't run an intercooler. And the really keen eye will notice that there's two sets of fuel rails on this thing. Well, what we do with a lot of our streetcar drag and drive builds here at KSR is it's a dual fuel system car, meaning that when we're cruising around on the street, she runs on this fuel system. That little bitty fuel line there feeds enough power to make, 500-600 horsepower pretty easy. And then when I floor it and the big old turbo starts spooling and making some boost, it switches to this fuel tank, this mechanical fuel pump, this set of injectors, and then Soccer Mom is sipping on some alcohol while she's going down the racetrack making boost. And as soon as I step back off the throttle, she's back on pump gas again, drive her back around to the pits. It's kind of a cool setup. I'm pretty proud of my engineering and tuning stuff here, that how this car is worked, because literally the car stays at Will's house typically when we're not doing any kind of major work here. Will hopped in her, drove her to work today, and obviously we drove her on all of sick week and had a really good week on sick week. So it's just one of those cool projects, and she's pretty and she's a little different because there's not too many second gens out there, especially that run as fast as she does, on stock suspension and a little bitty radial tire.
Dude, this setup sounds so cool. I have a lot to learn about meth injection, alcohol injection, amping up a fuel system. I'm only running like 6 pounds of boost on my GTO Roxy, and I know I need more fuel to be able to get more boost through it, but I have a lot to learn when it comes to all that. This unit sounds really cool. So it kicks over into a mechanical fuel pump, but there's got to be some kind of wiring or some kind of cool juju that happens there, that whenever you go wide open throttle, I assume it's wide open throttle, maybe it's a certain RPM, or maybe you have a switch or something. That is so cool, man. So you've developed this, you guys have developed this alternative sort of secondary fuel system for race car stuff. Like, wow. Because the streetable version of the car, I'm sure, is like super low boost, and the drivability is totally different than whenever it's injected with the alcohol. And does the alcohol add to the fuel, like, or is it primarily alcohol whenever it's switched over into the race mode? This is so cool, dude. I hope other people that are watching this have some of the same questions as I do, because I'm genuinely interested in learning. I hope they're not dumb questions. It's awesome.
Well, Emily, I think those are actually really good questions, and a lot of people have been interested in how we do this, and I have heard those questions before. And what we are actually doing when we switch is it completely shuts off this set of fuel injectors and runs on the larger fuel injectors that are the alcohol fuel system. So using our Holly Dominator computer and their injector driver module, which is a separate box that runs like really high amp injectors, because these injectors here are 600 pound per hour injectors. They're kind of big, like especially for this engine. They're more appropriately sized for some larger engines. But we've got a 600 pound per hour injector on the alcohol side of the fuel system, and so far we're only opening it about 30% of the time, at least according to the duty cycle calculations in the computer. So a whole lot more room to go on our fuel injection system on the alcohol side. But yeah, when we are going down the racetrack, the car is 100% on methanol fuel. And then as soon as I step back off the throttle, it switches back to pump gas because there's no more boost. And yeah, we're running a little bit more than 6 pounds of boost in Soccer Mom. The current combination with the Texas Speed 388 has seen 29 pounds of boost. And that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty big number. But the original stock block combination that we had in here, we had run as much as 45 pounds of boost through that combination. The stock block, bored over 20 thousandths 5.3 aluminum block, all factory stuff, had a stock stroke crankshaft in it. Not a stock crank, but an aftermarket stock stroke crankshaft. And that little motor did pretty well, but we're expecting to go a good bit faster with this Texas Speed 388 once we dial the boost up more into that 40 PSI range. So, got any other interesting questions for me about old soccer mom here?
Well, that was a really cool explanation. I liked it. Good job. Man, that is so cool. So your power numbers with regular gas are like 500 to 600, you said. So what are your power numbers on meth? When she's running full alcohol, cool factor is high, banging through the boost, what are the power numbers there?
How much horsepower does soccer mom make? Well, we have only dynoed it up to, I think we dynoed it on 20 PSI, and it made, I think, right at 1200 wheel horsepower. Now, when we were on the track, we were up closer to 30 PSI, and based off the numbers that we saw, you know, there's kind of some calculators out there on the internet that you can put in your weight of your vehicle and the mile an hour you run at the quarter mile. Based off some of those calculators, we're somewhere right around 1600 horsepower at the flywheel. Now, when we were talking to Texas Speed about building this engine, we told them we wanted to make 2000 horsepower. So if we can go 730s, 740s with 1600 horsepower, how fast can we go with 2000 horsepower? That's the exciting part. We hope to find out pretty soon, now that we got her back going again with our own transmission in the car.
Such badass power numbers, and you're going for even more. So let's go from the front of the car to the back. You mentioned suspension, and I think you said it was stock. Surely I heard that wrong. I know we have a small tire situation back there, which doesn't seem to limit you at all. So tell us about the suspension and how you guys are putting all that power to the pavement and getting traction and running the times that you are with a small tire. It's pretty wicked.
All right, so you heard me say stock suspension. I will admit that in the racing world, stock suspension may be a little bit of a gray area. So for some people, that means completely stock parts and all that other stuff. Well, what we are doing with Soccer Mom, and this is a leaf spring car, we're still using leaf springs. Check that out. But we are using Calvert Racing split monos. So you can see it's a single leaf spring, and it's actually two halves. They call it a split mono. And you can see right here, there's the front leaf and then a rear leaf, and then they bolt together. I don't know why they do all that, but it works. And then we're using Calvert Racing, they call them Caltrax, and that's this bar set up here and this bracket and those brackets up there. And basically, we'll flip over here to the other side. Basically, as the rear end tries to twist, let's see if I can get my hand in here. As the rear end tries to twist, which is what rear ends typically do under power, this bar pushes forward, which that bracket right there, we can't really see the pivot point, but there's a bolt up here. So then as that bar pushes forward, the bracket here pushes down on the spring so that the rear end gets pushed into the ground to help with traction while we are accelerating. And we've got some really good AFCO double adjustable shocks on the car. And that's some of the trick for how we go as fast as we go on a 275 60/15 drag radial. And there's a little bit of science and power management there, because with a radial tire you have to manage your power, because if you ever spin the tire at all, it just spins and goes up in smoke. So that's part of the game we fight with this car, as far as applying enough power to go fast, but not so much power that we either wheelie or we spin the tires. It's a fun game sometimes.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool rear suspension setup. I can see how it's stock configuration, like it's a lot of the stock components, they're just modified and tweaked and added various pieces like the Caltrax and things like that that help that suspension setup actually get traction. Sounds amazing. So we went from the front of the car to the back, but we never addressed the middle of the car, the transmission, which you had issues with on Sick Week. So give us the rundown on the trans setup that you have. It's an automatic, right? Yes, I believe so. So give us the rundown on the trans.
All right, so I moved the car inside to show you guys, to show Emily, what's going on for our transmission. So you may recognize that's a Powerglide transmission pan, which we run a Powerglide with a 158 first gear, which is an aftermarket gear. We had a 180 first gear, which is what was in the transmission that we borrowed. And basically we like the 159 because it makes first gear a lot longer and it makes the RPM drop from first gear to second gear less, because typically we're not under full power until a second and a half into the run anyway. We're ramping the boost in. So the 180 first gear makes it want to spin the tires a little bit more. But the 158 doesn't do that as much. But it also makes life a lot harder on the torque converter. And new for this year, we have a Circle D bolt together torque converter. That's something new we're running this year. I'm pretty happy with it. The transmission is an FTI built Powerglide. And then back here for the street, we have a Gear Vendors Overdrive. And I gotta admit, this thing is an absolute game changer when it comes to how much of a pleasure this car is to drive going down the road. Last year for Sick Week, we did not have an overdrive. Even with a 350 gear, we were only cruising at like 55, 60 miles an hour. And down the interstate, that wasn't a lot of fun. So this year, again, we had the 350 rear gear. Now we have another third member that's set up with a 411 gear when we're racing 8th mile stuff. But the 350 gear plus the Gear Vendors Overdrive, this thing was money. We were cruising 75 miles an hour, like just riding on down the interstate, keeping up with anybody we wanted to keep up with, which was absolutely amazing.
That makes sense. A Powerglide's such a good choice. I have a blast banging gears in my manual, but it's just not as fast typically unless you're a superhero driver, which there are a lot of amazing drivers that bang gears and standard transmissions on the track, but dang. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, it was cool to know the gear changes and stuff. Having a taller first gear makes a lot of sense. That's really cool. Well, dude, you guys have built quite a powerhouse, and it seems like the setup is really, really good and leaves room for improvement with that goal of 2,000 horsepower. I cannot wait to see this car make more passes as the year goes on. What other events are you guys going to be doing with this car that we can see you race at? I'm sure most everyone here is subscribed to your channel, but if they aren't, we're going to send them that way. You guys do a fantastic job on your cars and everyone else's cars. Mad props to you. Thank you so much for taking the time today to toss videos back and forth with us. So good to see you and hang out. We had hot dogs on the side of Garfield one day, our tool truck, and it was just a blast. Sick Week was so fun, so can't wait for the next go round. Awesome job, dude.
All right, so for this year, we've already done Sick Week. We have an event coming up here in Gainesville, Florida called the 352 Shootout, which is kind of a streetcar-based thing. We plan to run all of the Cletus and Cars events that have drag racing. There's a chance we may do another drag and drive event. We'll have to see how it works out with scheduling, with single dad life and when I have my kids and all that fun stuff, and when either Will or Kimber could go with me. So yeah, that's what we've got on the plan so far. We're going to be doing some testing both at Gainesville Raceway, which is about 10 miles that way from the shop, and then we do go down to Bradenton often for some of their little local streetcar shootouts. They have some grudge races or grudge race events where they have some streetcar classes, so probably be doing some of that too. But thanks for having us on the episode, and thanks to Peak for sponsoring this episode. It's always cool that a big company is involved with this stuff that we find so cool. So I've got one more little surprise for you as we're signing off here. All right, we figured we'd give you a little fun sign off here. Kind of show you a little bit more what Soccer Mom's all about. Oh, heavy doors.
Dude, she just lit those tires up. Thank you so much for that sign off. That was great. You guys are awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we'll be watching for more passes as the car sees more power. Y'all are the best. Can't wait to see y'all soon. And you guys, if you're watching this episode, please be sure and subscribe to these guys and leave your comments as to who you'd like to see next on this awesome series. We appreciate you being here and watching and liking and thumbs upping, and everything helps. So, of course, subscribing to Peak Auto as well, because they're supporting these crazy car hobby folks that we are. Much appreciation. We love y'all, and we'll see you on the next episode.